Hey everybody, I hope you weathered the snow and are keeping warm and out of the cold. I am back in Hartford again today. It's my first day back since the storm, and I was somewhat surprised to see that there's actually a lot of snow in Hartford too. Pushed around, I'm looking at my office window at the large piles of it in lots of parking lots around here as they weather it, and I've heard stories from lots of colleagues of, transportation challenges. So I hope you're keeping safe and maybe enjoying the beautiful sunshine, although it is quite brisk out there. Session starts officially next week, a week from yesterday. So Wednesday, February 4th is our opening day. And so we're in the sort of final stretch of time before that starts, and lots of official processes begin, which is to say committee meetings, hearings. We are in joint session on Wednesday the 4th, as the governor will speak to us and present his proposals. So what's happening between now and then are lots of more information sources. So I have talked a lot in the past about all the 20-minute meetings I hold with people who are asking for various fiscal policy, tax relief, tax-related issues. But what I wanted to emphasize today is a bunch of other kinds of information. That's not the only way that I seek out and get good information about what lies ahead of us. And one of the things that's happening now is all of the committees in the legislature are holding office hours, which is to say the chairs of the committee make themselves available, usually on Zoom, and members can come in and ask questions about what's being raised, bring their issues to the chairs, and it's really helpful. Certainly to the chairs to get information from our colleagues about what's on their mind, but also for our colleagues to hear everybody else about all the things that are being requested, and a reminder that this is the short session, and it starts in February and ends in early May, and that goes by very fast. And it's the second year for those of us who do the budget work. It's second year of our biennium. We passed the budget last year, and so we're a bit constrained. We're not creating something out of whole cloth. We're editing the behemoth that we passed last year. So committees are a good source of information. There's also a bunch of caucuses within the legislature, which I've discussed before, and that generally means sort of a subgroup of people who have a shared interest. And the biggest caucus that I, of course, a member of is the House Democratic Caucus. We had a big meeting last week, our Issues Caucus, in which we all got to be together and talk to each other, both the committee chairs gave presentations, and we all just sort of caught up with one another about what was happening in our districts and different parts of the state. But there are also a bunch of other issue caucuses, most of which I don't participate in a lot because it's a lot of time. But the one that I do the most is the Rural Caucus. And these are bipartisan groups of legislators who represent rural parts of the state. And that one is a really good and powerful one to be part of. We're positioned in good places in the legislature, and it's a chance for us to hear directly from people, rural related issues. So for example, one of the things we talked about, we had a Rural Caucus meeting earlier this week, and we talked about some potential tax relief or relief for dairy farms, which are really struggling at the moment for a lot of reasons, and also about the farm valuation issue, which was related to Section 490. It's a section of the code that changed the way that we value farms rather than to make them related to the agricultural value of the land, as opposed to taxation being premised on the sort of market value of the land, because particularly in our neck of the woods, land is quite expensive, and so we wanted to make it, that was passed as a way to help keep property taxes lower for farmers and more tied to the nature of their business. They have to get revalued every few years, and the executive branch announced some new valuations recently that were a bit eye-popping to a lot of farmers, and so it was a lot of people on the Rural Caucus who raised this issue, both with one another, talking to farmers, and also talking to the executive branch. And the executive branch, to their credit, responded pretty quickly and shut that down, that increase. And we'll have lots more conversations about how to handle that, and also possibly having conversations about different kinds of land, for example, forested lands that may be subject to that Section 490. And so that'll be an ongoing conversation, but it is for now paused and will not move ahead. So that's an example of a caucus being a source of good information. I also wanted to note that the really good information that I gather from all of you in the district, and I've had a couple of events in the district recently that sort of, illustrate that. I was at a meeting of the Foundation for Norfolk Living, which works on affordable housing, an event with them, and it was a chance for me to talk to them about, the challenges, particular challenges, and the changes to the way of, housing is funded, and where the needs are, and how that interacts with state policy, and maybe where state policy needs to shift a little bit to address the realities of creating housing in the northwest corner. And that was a really good source of information for me. And then Kent had a climate event focused on solar energy at Town Hall last weekend, both right before the storm, which was also really interesting. First of all, to talk to people in Kent who are thinking about installing solar panels, who want to work on solar energy more broadly, and other people who were on a panel with me to talk about how it actually works, and what's happening nationally. And we sat together and listened to a podcast involving from Bill McKibben, who is a big, very important and interesting and well-informed activist, nationwide. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of him, who helped us center the conversation. And so I came, from that with a bunch of notes about what we can do in terms of, making sustainable energy, making sure that it's affordable, among other things, and that it shouldn't actually be increase costs, but it should help reduce costs, which, as we all know, are quite high in Connecticut. So that's, I can't emphasize enough the sort of many ways that you get good information from people if you show up. And tomorrow morning I'm going to be at Northwestern Connecticut Community College in Winsted, which is our regional college, to hear about those concerns. And I've had a bunch of conversations today about higher ed issues and student loan issues, and so lots of that going on as well. So lots of the fire hose is strong this week. And I just wanted to note, I guess in closing, this all feels very constructive in Connecticut. Sort of how that exists in the world in which we live, and with where the headlines are coming out of places like, Minnesota and Maine. And I have people close to me who live in both of those places. My oldest daughter went to college in Minneapolis or St. Paul, and has many close friends who are there, who I have heard from. And my other daughter lives in Portland, Maine, who has, gave me a report of what's happening there with respect to federal ICE activity, and sort of the alarming fact that this is the first time in our history that the federal government seems to have declared itself immune to the law, and explicitly denying peaceful opponents protection for their speech. And that it's good to pay attention to that. But one of the positive things about that was hearing about people from all sectors of the community who stood up together and helped each other out, supported one another. It was a whole lot less political than maybe it reads when you're reading the newspaper, a whole lot less partisan. And it's, people standing up for their communities and trying to take care of one another. And that's a really positive thing. So I know we'll keep doing that in the Northwest Corner. Take care. Have a good weekend.